All right, 1.2, operations on polynomials. So a couple of quick things here. There's a little typo here. This obviously is not 16 through 24. This should be 1 through 6. And I'm going to do the first 4 with you, and then I'm going to give you guys a little bit of freedom to do the last 2 on your own. What they're having us do, if you look at like example number 1, is they're saying, hey, we want you to take P of x, which we defined here, and we want you to subtract Q of x from that. So here's Q of x. Really important for you to know, anytime they tell you to subtract polynomials, use parentheses. Don't need them if you're adding, like down here we're going to be adding, no big deal, but subtracting, just trust me, use parentheses. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to help you keep track of the information. So let's start by just rewriting the problem. So P of x is 3x cubed minus x squared plus 6x minus 2. And then I'm going to say minus, and remember I said parentheses, and Q of x is x squared minus 6. All right, I'm going to zoom in so I'll have enough room for all of this. Now that I got it copied down, the first thing I want to do is I want to distribute this negative. So really that's negative x squared, and that's positive 6. And then if you want, you can literally just copy all of this down. You don't really have to copy it all down. I like to keep it all in a line, or you could just refer to this line and this line and know you're going to be combining like terms. I like to just use simple symbols for combining like terms. You could use highlighters. You could use, what I like to do just really quickly is I do a circle, and there is no other cubes. So that's the only cube, okay? And then I'll say like for the squareds, I'll do like a box. There's 2 of those, so 2 negative x squareds makes negative 2x squared. And then maybe you could do like an underline, but there's only one of those, so we're just going to say plus 6x. And then, I don't know, it's up to you how you want to do it. You could do like some like cloud thing. It really doesn't matter. Just I like to have some system in place to keep organized all the like terms. So negative 2 and positive 6 makes plus 4. And there's my answer. Okay, I have combined the like terms. I have done P of x minus Q of x, and I have an answer. Just keep in mind, you have a minus sign. So you're going to need those parentheses, right? Those are going to be very important. That's just, the reason why that's so important, by the way, is just so that you can keep track of when you have to distribute that negative and what you have to distribute it to. Because the common mistake here is that students will only apply the negative to the first term, and then they would keep this negative, and then they would have a wrong answer here, right? They would think this is negative 6, and then they have negative 8 here. Common mistake, so just try to avoid that one. All right, next up, we're going to do f of x plus g of x. So let's start by just copying down what f of x is. And let's see, I'll do this one. We'll underline it green. There's f of x. And I'll underline blue for g of x. Something I want to show you about g of x is right now it's not in standard form. And so you might want to just go ahead and put it in standard form, which really just means you're going to do the negative x squared first. Again, remember standard form is highest degree down to lowest degree. We learned that in the last video. Okay, so what does this look like? So f of x is 2x squared plus x minus 4. And g of x is negative x squared plus 3. Now, we don't have as much to worry about here since our values don't have a big negative in between them. We're just adding, so literally all we have to do is combine like terms. So again, I'm gonna underline my x squareds. 2x squared minus 1x squared, that just makes 1x squared, which you don't have to put the 1. And then I have my x's, and there is no x over here, so plus x. And then I have my constants, and negative 4 plus 3 makes negative 1, and there's our answer. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. That way, on both of those, that's the way that you do it where you keep it all in a line, okay? And that's totally fine. Another way that you could do this, I want to show you, is by going vertically. So I guess you could call this like horizontally adding and subtracting them. And then the other way is doing it vertically. So let's color code this cell again. So I'm going to make P of x, highlight that in red again. And now I'm going to be adding f of x. So I'll highlight that in green. So let me show you what that would look like. So p of x, I'm going to write that first. That's 3x cubed minus x squared plus 6x minus 2. And then right below it, I'm going to put my f of x. But I'm going to make sure that all my like terms line up. So I have x squared here, x to the 1, x to the 0. So when I go to put my f of x in, I'm going to make sure it all lines up. So I'm going to put 2x squared here, positive x here, and negative 4 here. So I'm just adding these. So this is just like you would add multi-digit numbers back in the day. So 3x cubed plus nothing makes 3x cubed. Think of this as negative 1x squared and positive 2. That makes positive 1x squared, which again, you're just going to write as x squared. And then 6x plus 1x makes 7x. And then negative 2, negative 4 makes negative 6. So, boom. You could do the same thing with this minus 1. So let's go back and highlight some of these. So let's say h of x is yellow. And g of x I'll just do in blue as well. But remember, I think we're going to use the standard form one. It's just a little bit easier. So h of x is negative 4x plus 5, which I said I'd highlight in yellow. And then g of x, which I am subtracting, is negative, use parentheses still, negative x squared plus 3. All right, I just wanted to write it down, so let's zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. Put my other parentheses in. All right, we are doing the top minus the bottom, and I kind of squeezed this over a little bit too much. Let me just redo this. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Because essentially what's going on here is we don't have an x term for g of x. We only have an x squared. So you can write this if you want. You don't have to write this. You could think of this as really like there's like a 0x here. And the same way, we don't have an x squared for h of x. So you don't have to write this, but you could think of this as 0x squared. And now when you line it all up, all you're doing is you're doing 0 minus negative 1. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. 0 minus negative 1, that's a double negative. So this is the same thing as saying 0 plus x squared. So what I like to do is do like little pluses here when you have a double negative. They cancel out. So 0 plus 1 is 1x squared. And then I have negative 4 minus 0, which of course is just negative 4x. And then, oh, I made a mistake there. Remember, that's negative 4x minus 0, but it's still negative 4x. And then I have 5 minus 3, okay? I canceled that minus out, but that was just for this term, so that might be a little confusing. Maybe what we can do is just know that the minus is still out here, but this turns into a plus when you're going straight down. You need some way to account for them when you have double negatives is all I'm trying to tell you. So anyway, on this last term here, I have 5 minus 3. 5 minus 3 is 2, so I'm going to write plus 2. And there's my answer, 1x squared minus 4x plus 2. Again, you don't need the 1 there. You could just say x squared minus 4x plus 2. That's fine as well. Both are fine. There's nothing wrong with having the 1 there. Just know it's just redundant. Okay, so I've shown you a couple ways to do it. Up to you how you want to do it. I usually do things in the horizontal way. It's just easier for me to keep track of it. I'm just showing you can do it vertically. Obviously, things to get a little bit confusing when you have like double negatives and you have placeholders you have to fill in and all that kind of stuff. But as long as you keep the terms lined up and you keep track of your negatives, the vertical way works fine. I don't care which way you do it. I want you to do 5 and 6 on your own. I know 6 has 3 parts. I would recommend doing this the horizontal way, but keep track of your negative and use parentheses because it's going to be hard to do all 3 vertically. But you could just line them all up and put the negative in front of this, but I think it'll be more confusing. So again, I want you to try both of these on your own, and then when you're ready, like pause the video, and then when you're ready to check your work, unpause it to see how you did. All right, so for number 5, we got h of x plus p of x. Here's your h of x, negative 4x plus 5. And then p of x is 3x cubed minus x squared plus 6 minus 2. don't have to worry about parentheses. We're just adding. So what I do is I just go ahead. There's no other cubes. I wrote down that first. There's no other squares. I wrote down that first. There are two terms with x's in them, so I do negative 4x and positive 6x to make 2x. There are two constants, so 5 and negative 2 make positive 3. And then, boom, there's my answer. Easy peasy. And then for this third one with the 3 parts, I got my q of x, h of x, but remember I'm subtracting it, so I use parentheses, and then I have f of x. First thing I want to do is distribute that negative, so I wrote it down here. That's what it looks like after I distribute it. Then I go through, I have x squared and 2x squared, that makes 3x squared. I have 4x and 1x, that makes 5x. And then I have negative 6, negative 5, and negative 4 together, that makes negative 15. So there's my final answer. And that's it for those. Now let's talk about multiplication on the next page. All right, so I'm going to show you 4 different ways to multiply. But first, we need a problem to multiply. And I'm going to do, it says multiplying polynomials. I'm going to give you a binomial as an example. So the binomial we're going to use today, I'm just making it up. It's 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 5. And we're going to multiply this thing 4 different ways. And I just want to show you, you get the same answer 4 different ways. The first way is important. FOIL, this only works for binomials. So only binomials, just know that. What do I mean by binomial? We talked about this last time. It means 2 terms, so I have 2 terms. The other 3 ways, I could do a binomial times a trinomial, or a trinomial times a trinomial, and so on. It will work. But this way, FOIL that I'm going to show you first only works for binomial. So FOIL is just an acronym. It stands for first, outside, inside, last. And what do I mean by that? I mean, what are the first 2 terms? Well, the first 2 terms are 2x and 3x. Do you see how it's the first here and the first there? Okay. What are the outside terms? The outside terms are 2x and 5. And we're going to be adding each of these terms together. What are the inside terms? Well, the inside terms are negative 1 and 3x. And then lastly, the last I'll do in black is negative 1 and 5. And let's just make sure you understand what I mean. So first, these are both first in the binomial. Outside of the 2 binomials together. Inside, this is the inner and the inner. And last, the last term and the last term. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to zoom in so I can have a little bit more space to work. But that's what FOIL stands for. First, outside, inside, last. You might want to write that down if you don't know that. First, outside, inside, and then last. Now, all you got to do is do these 4 operations, combine like terms, and you are done. So 2x times 3x makes 6x squared. 2x times 5 makes 10x. Negative 1 times 3x makes negative 3x. And then over here, a little bit hard to read because it spilled over. That's negative 1 times 5, just makes negative 5. Now you do have some like terms here, 10x and negative 3x. So altogether, we're going to have 6x squared. 10x minus 3x makes 7x minus 5. Okay, that's FOIL. FOIL's nice. It's a good strategy. But again, remember, it only works in this case where it's a binomial times a binomial. The other 3 I'm going to show you can potentially work for any type of polynomial. Binomial, trinomial, 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 monomial, trinomial, and so on. So I'm going to show you the one that is actually my favorite, the one that I think students usually end up using the most, and it is called the box method. And here's what you do. It doesn't matter which one. You take one of these, you put it on top, one of these on the side. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to do 2x minus 1 on top. And on bottom, or on the side, I'm going to put 3x plus 5. And you just do one at a time. Really, what you're going to have here is you're going to have first, outside, inside, last. But the box just helps make it simple. So let's zoom in and do this. So what is 3x times 2x? Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and x times x is x squared. So I got 6x squared. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. 5 times 2x is 10x. And 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Boom. Do I have any like terms? Yes, I do. these are like terms. So after you fill out the box, you got to see if you have any like terms to add together. And in this case, we do. So we add those together. I have 6x squared plus 7x minus 5. Notice we did it a different way, but we got the exact same answer. Math is like that, right? Sometimes there's a lot of different ways to do the same type of problem. Okay, so there's box method. All right, now let's go to the vertical method. Before I do vertical, I want to take you back in time to, what is this? Maybe third grade, I'm not really sure. But let's say I want to do 21 times 35. You've actually already learned the vertical method. Let's just review. Well, hopefully you have. I could do 5 times 1, and I get 5. I can do 5 times 2, and I get 10. Sometimes you have to carry the 1, but we don't need to here. And then I'm going to do 30 times 1 and 30. And since I'm doing 30, I can go ahead and just put a 0 here, right, as a placeholder, since I'm doing a tens spot. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. All right, 3 times 1, 3 times 2. All right, and then what do? Then we add. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 0 plus 3 is 3. 6 plus 1 is 7. And there's my answer for that problem, 735. All right. I'm just showing you that because that's exactly the same algorithm or the same pattern for how we do vertical multiplication when it comes to binomials, right? So it just looks a little different, but I'm going to do 2x minus 1 times, I guess you don't really want to do a x here right now, right? This x is for multiplying, so I guess I should have done like a dot since we're now in upper mathematics here. And then I'm going to multiply this by 3x plus 5. Well, let's just do the same thing we did before. I'm going to take this 5 and multiply by -1. That would be -5. I'm going to take this 5 and multiply by 2x. That would be 10x. Put a 0 for my placeholder. 3x times -1 is -3x. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. And then I add. -5 and 0 makes -5. 10x minus 3x makes 7x. And then 6x squared. Boom. Got the exact same answer as the other two ways, didn't I? 6x squared plus 7x minus 5. Easy peasy. All right. Last way I'm going to show you is called double distributive or double distribution. And this is actually, when you look at Khan Academy and you look at the hints, this is how they do it on Khan. So I'm just going to write KA's way. You'll see them do it this way. So let's just recopy down the problem. It's 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 5. And this is all they do. They take the first term, they put it in front. And then they say, well, we're going to multiply 2x by 3x plus 5. Then they take the second term, and they put it in front as well of 3x plus 5. And then all we have to do is distribute this thing twice. So 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 5 is 10x. -1 times 3 is -3x. And then -1 times 5 is -5. And then once again, I have like terms here. So I'm going to write 6x squared plus 7x minus 5. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, 4 ways that you can do multiplication. Again, remember, this only works. FOIL only works for binomials. So students usually pick this way. It's the smoothest, it's the easiest to keep track of. And I don't care which way you do. I don't. But whatever way you do it, you need to be an expert in it. So that's all that matters. All right, that's it for this section of notes. I'll see you guys in the next video.